and welcome to our series of mini interviews from our Artist Archive. My name is Ali Strawn and I'm the president of Assorted Grains. We're an artist-run not-for-profit who create bold, multidisciplinary events and experiences for the benefit of the community. Today is our first in the series of these artist spotlights, so I'd like to introduce you to our first artist, Stacey Bennett. Welcome, Stacey.
Hi, Ali. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me today. I'll give a quick little rundown on who Stacey is, and then we can jump into our little mini interview. So Stacey Bennett is an award-winning regional artist based in Logan and has worked within the creative industries for over 15 years across numerous roles. Stacey works predominantly with pastels, focusing on portraiture and wildlife, and experimenting between realism and expressive abstraction. Stacey has always been interested in human faces and their stories, and her portraits are bold and empowering. She believes in every life has a purpose and a unique story that needs to be captured and documented. Many of her artworks are commissioned for private collections around Australia, but she's also interested in working on public collaborations and projects in the future. So, what do you love most about your art form?
Oh, I don't even know where to begin. I love it so much. I could sit here for hours and hours and hours talking about pastels. But look, I mean, yes, I am mainly a pastel artist. I love pastels, if you haven't picked up on that already. But I think if I had to pick something, I would say that it's so versatile. Um, for those who don't know much about pastels, there are so many different ways you can use it. So, for example, pastels come in pastel pencils, which are generally quite a bit of a hard pastel, which means they're really, really great for getting the details and realistic drawings underway. They also come in a stick form, similar to a chalk. They're not quite a chalk though, but they are soft and they can be medium and they can be hard. So that gives you a variety of different effects you can get from sticks. And you can also get them in what's called a pan pastel. So it is like, imagine like your compact powders for makeup, similar to that. So I literally get makeup applicators to create works by basically smudging them all over the paper and creating large areas of basically the base of my painting using pan pastels. And then you can build up on top of that. So with all the different many shapes and forms and hardness and softness that they come in, it's so versatile that you can basically achieve whatever you want to achieve, whether it's a realistic painting or a complete expressive, abstract, go wild painting. It is just, it is great. And it's so forgiving as well, because it is similar to a chalk. If you do something and you make a mistake, which I do all the time, I'm able to just scrub it away, wipe it away, and start again. So that's what I love around with pastels.
Yeah, and there's so much that you've just told me about pastels that I didn't even know.
Yeah, great.
I think it's probably one of those things that people may not even consider when they think about art. It's generally like, when we think about art, it's very much like a painting visual medium, but pastels sound
Mm,
really cool to work with. What are the biggest
yeah,
challenges?
yeah. Well, look, I mean, as I said, you can scrub away your mistakes. That's great. But you can also scrub away your finished product as well. So it's really hard to, I guess, complete a piece and then be able to store it or display it. So, look, I kind of sometimes envy painters who just paint on a canvas and then they can just straight away, once it's dried, straight away hang it up on a wall. And I just think, wow, look, it's probably not that simple. But I just think, wow, wouldn't that be great if I could do that with my work? But I can't. So I have to really carefully consider how I store my pieces and how I then display them. So pastel ideally need to be behind glass to display, around a gallery, or if I am, someone's hanging it up in their house. But you can't have pastel touch in the glass. It needs to be separated from the glass because it can also smudge the painting. And I think also some static as well can actually pull the pastels off the paper, which I have learned the hard way.
Oh no.
So it actually needs some specialist framing, and without going into too much detail, essentially you need to frame the work, and there needs to be space between the artwork and the glass. A specialist framer who knows how to frame pastels will be able to do that really easily and explain it, but it doesn't come cheap. So framing, full stop, is not cheap, especially if you're getting pastels. There's additional steps to take. So yeah, that's the biggest challenge, is being able to display my work. And if I wanted to do an exhibition, for example, and having to frame numerous pieces comes with a significant cost. So like every artist, funding is another challenge, and many grants don't cover framing costs, or they'll only cover a proportion of it, which isn't very much. So for me, that's the biggest challenge, being able to get my work out there and still afford to be able to do it.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds really challenging. Do you end up with pastel all over you when you're creating?
Oh yeah, yeah, but I love it.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's one of those things, I think. I know when my kids started playing with paint and stuff like that, it's like half of the paint would end up on them because it felt so good. So I guess in
Yeah.
one way, it's like you immerse yourself in the work.
Yeah, definitely. And the great thing about pastels is that you can just walk away from it. It's not like paint where you've kind of got it all out ready to go. And then if you need to walk away, you need to pack it all away. I can just leave it all there, walk away, wash my hands, get on with life, and come back. So,
Yeah, nice.
yeah.
Yeah. Is there fixatives and stuff that you can use to help with the, um, I guess, the smudging?
Yeah, that's quite a controversial topic. So, a lot of pastel artists, they will swing one way or another. I am anti-fixative, only because, look, you've potentially been burnt in the past where if you use a fixative to a pastel, so imagine pastel, it isn't a chalk, I'll make that clear, but it's similar to a chalk. So you can imagine that kind of that texture. If you're spraying something wet over it, you are going to lose a lot of the finer detail, and especially a lot of the whites and lights to your work will sometimes dull right down. So you can completely ruin a piece. Um, for me, it's all about picking the right paper. So I tend to use pastel matte. It feels really smooth. It's such an amazing paper. It feels smooth, but it's actually got a lot of tooth to it. So it can take several layers, but it doesn't, like a lot of your work doesn't actually kind of fall off the paper. So I use pastel matte, I get it framed, and that's the best way. I do not use a fixative. Otherwise, I will probably ruin my work and then cry.
Fair enough. That's totally, I guess it's one of those things that you learn the hard way.
Yes, and I am part of many Facebook groups, and I have unfortunately seen a lot of people learn the hard way. And I've seen a few comparisons between when they finished and then when they sprayed, and they're desperately seeking for, people's assistance on what to do next. And it's like, no, you've kind of ruined it now, sorry.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
really
And I guess once you've
disheartening.
fixed it, you can't really work on top of that then either. So
Yeah, well, some people can. Yeah, and one thing that you can do, so I have done this before, you can use a fixative between layers. So if you wanted to do a base layer and kind of fix that in place, you can use a workable fixative to continue building on it, but I certainly don't use it at the end.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So this seems like it's been like a passion of yours, this medium, for a really long
Mm.
time. What is the first creative thing you remember making? Was it with pastels? How did this all come about?
Um, Look, I mean, the very first creative thing I remember making was probably back when I was like 8 years old. Like I've always been drawing, but look, I've always drawn with just your regular colored pencils like you do, or lead pencils. And what I vividly remember, I had this hardcover Disney book with all your Disney characters in it. And I loved Ariel, the Little Mermaid. So I remember when I was about 8, just constantly drawing her over and over and over. And I just absolutely loved drawing that. I think that was kind of like my start into, portraiture, even though it's not probably a true representation of a human being. But then then I moved more into the realism, and I really started using basically just all my lead pencils. So I remember all my teen magazines, Dolly Girlfriend, grabbing out all the posters and drawing all your 90s celebrities, Jennifer Aniston, Jennifer Love Hewitt. When I was about 11 years old, I was starting to draw portraiture. And I've still got those copies at home somewhere. And it's a really nice reminder to kind of see that progression, I guess. And pastels actually only came about um, fairly recently. So it was actually my art teacher back in year 12 that pushed me to try charcoal, because I'd only ever used pencils prior. She sent me home with a picture of a cemetery actually, and says, come back, I want you to try charcoal and tell me what you think. And charcoal, I guess, being a similar feeling and texture to pastels, I took that away. I worked with it, and I absolutely fell in love with the way charcoals felt on the paper, the way I was able to smudge and create all these really cool effects I couldn't do with pencils. My teacher was like, this is your medium. And so I worked a lot with charcoals. And then I guess over time, I realized that I wanted to move away from just the black and white and move into pencils. And I think someone gave me a set of, cheap pastel pencils one year for Christmas. And I had no idea what I was doing. And the first pastel drawing I did was of Marilyn Monroe. And then I was like, wow, I love this. And then started to learn. I realized I was using the wrong pastels, the wrong paper, the wrong everything, and then started to teach myself what I needed to do. And then I just fell in love with it. So it's only fairly recent. I would say maybe the last 5 or 6 years I've been using pastels.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love charcoal too, and I've never sort of delved into the realm of pastels, and so I think yeah, it's really nice to see. So I will share some images as part of this audio as well, and you
Yep.
can see the contrast and the beautiful brightness, even against a black background.
Yeah.
It just all comes to life. It
Yeah.
looks
I
amazing.
yeah, I love my pieces to pop where they can. And I find the color really helps with that, especially against that dark background.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I've got another bit of a left of field question for you. So
Mm.
do you think being a successful creative person is more nature or nurture?
Yeah. I've always wondered this, and look, I mean, I go back and forth all the time between nature and nurture, and I'm gonna be a bit pedantic here. Let's say I'm gonna make it a 30-70 split. So I'm gonna say it's a 30% nature. So I think there needs to be a little bit of natural ability to want to be able to create. Now, I'm not saying that you need to have this amazing talent from the get-go, but it's around your natural ability and your natural desire that you want to be able to do this. You want to pursue it. But the rest of is nurture. The rest is, 70% of that is teaching yourself, understanding that you can't just pick up a pencil and know how to create these wonderful pieces of work. There are skills, there are techniques that you need to learn. There's also materials that you need to learn, and like anything, you've got to nurture that to really get from point A to point B. And I really picked up on that, because when I left high school, it was 12 years before I picked up a pencil again. So I did art in year 12, did quite well. And then I guess I never understood how I could take that professionally. I probably needed a better mentor in my life maybe at that time. But I didn't pick up a pencil for 12 years. And so when I did, 12 years later, I decided to draw a portrait of my son when he was born. Um, and look, I look back on it now. It's not a terrible picture, but to kind of go, wow, like I hadn't nurtured that over that 12 years, and I'd lost a lot of things. So I kind of had to reskill myself up and practice and learn all these things. And I've been doing that over the last few years now. And I can certainly see that because I've taken the time to practice skills, such as how to draw wrinkles, how to draw hair, understanding, composition and perspective and light and all of that, that is what has made me go from A to B. So for me, yeah, you need a little bit of desire and nature to do it, but it's really about nurture at the most part.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think
Yeah.
that the people who end up being artists do have that, I guess, sort of natural inclination and a little bit of natural flair for the creative or whatever medium they choose to.
Mm,
Because the
yeah.
people who don't feel like they have that skill then feel afraid. There's like that whole big barrier that stops them from then nurturing that side.
Yeah,
But it's not to
exactly.
say it's not there. It's just that it's it may not have been, it may not have come as easy as for somebody else. So,
Yeah,
or you
exactly.
could have just tried the wrong thing. Like I think it's, you know,
Oh,
someone who might have tried to be a painter their whole life but never really got into it
yeah.
could switch medium and then just has fallen in love. So yeah, I completely.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, I mean, I've tried painting several times and it's not really for me. And yeah, look, I think you've got to find what works for you and also find the style that works for you. Just because somebody may be this type of artist doesn't mean that that's going to be you. You need to find what works for you and what medium works for you and what you enjoy. Make sure that you
Yeah.
enjoy it. And then when you do, just learn as much as you can, whether that be through YouTube videos, following other artists, practicing. You'll find that you will definitely improve 100%.
Yeah, lovely. Everyone who's listening needs to take on that advice.
Yeah.
um, so I guess what does your ideal project look like then?
Mm. Look, I love public art and placemaking and activation of spaces and stuff like that, but I guess my medium being pastels doesn't always fit quite too well in that. Now, it's not to say it can't, but I guess when you think of public art and stuff like that, you generally think of sculptures or murals and stuff like that. So pastels typically, I guess in a way, if you go out there live and you draw with a pastel or chalk out in the public realm, it's going to be a temporary thing. Um, but I just love the idea of my work, I guess, being out there in the community, for heaps of people to enjoy, for people to kind of just stumble across it and kind of take it and understand what it is or take their own interpretation from it. So for me, look, I mean, I'm going to continue being a pastel artist. I love it, but it would be cool if it could be shown in some way. So that might be in a different form. It might be like light projections on a building. It could be, printed on a vinyl wrap and a building or a bus or something really cool wrapped. Or what I really love is the idea of also these chalk festivals that are happening all around the world. We need some around here locally. I've said it many times, but I'd love to just get a whole heap of artists and we're all creating these really cool works. Even if I'm collaborating with a few other artists and doing some live chalk work, I don't know, in a street or in a footpath, in a place where people, are wandering by and able to just watch the process happen. Um, I don't know how to do it yet, but I'd love to also learn that 3D technique. Have you ever seen those
Yeah.
chalk works where it's, I understand the theory. I haven't quite figured out how to do it, but those massive big hero pieces where they manage to kind of skew it. So where you look at the picture, it looks really like stretched out, but when you stand on a certain angle, it like pops out like a 3D version. I'd love to collaborate with some artists and kind of learn that skill and do some massive big hero piece. So that would be great if I had, a chance to do something like that. That's sort of what
Yeah, I
I'd
think
like
that
to do.
sounds amazing. And like, I guess for lots of councils who may be a bit hesitant, or even building owners and things like that, some chalk works might feel less risky too, because it's not necessarily permanent. It can be a
Yeah,
feature that can then potentially be refreshed at some point. I love
yeah,
the idea of a
exactly.
chalk festival, and watch this space too, because I have some ideas around how we can work with you in the future and
So,
kind of bring that
sounds great.
together. So that's a separate conversation. But yeah,
Yeah,
lovely.
awesome.
All right, thank you very much. We'll wrap this up and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.